Hello, everybody. Welcome to the fourth BPSAA Podcast, this time with the subject of internet freedom. Our list of very special guests today includes Luis Fernando Mises, a consultant that teaches leadership all over the United States. He's also a yoga instructor, a meditation teacher, a student of history and economics, a statesman with the Libertarian Party. Welcome, Luis. Thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
We also have Georgi today with us. He looks after marketing and customer support at BitTube. Welcome, Georgi.
Hello everyone.
And last but not least, we have Johhny from Handshake domains. Welcome. Very nice to have you here.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me.
So the subject we're discussing today is about internet freedom. And the big question is, can blockchain keep the web free? This is a big matter that I think is in a lot of people's heads right now, at least, people that understand the technical side of the internet, but also people who are simply worried about, their freedom online. So I will kick off with the first question. How is internet freedom threatened right now? Johhny, do we want to give your view?
Yeah, I can speak. I'll mostly be speaking from the DNS perspective, so with from internet domains. But with the current DNS system, we've talked to some insiders in the traditional registrars that run traditional domain registrars, and it looks like domain takedown requests have just been skyrocketing in the last couple of years. I guess before I even mentioned that, right now nobody really owns their domain names. It's just controlled by you have the registrar level who can take you down, and then you have the actual owners of the top level domains. Let's say .com is VeriSign. So you're just renting domains from them, and they can all take your domain down, which is happening more and more, like accelerating at a pretty substantial rate.
Johhny, would you say that this is the definition of centralization?
What's the definition of centralization?
No, I mean the way that domains are controlled right now by these central entities.
Yeah, pretty textbook definition of centralization, which is also why I love using Handshake as a way to bring on no coiners to blockchain in general, since it's a little difficult to talk about how Bitcoin decentralizes money, since you have to talk about how the banking system works and how like the US Treasury works and stuff, whereas with decentralized domains you just talk about here's domain names that you're already familiar with, here's why they're centralized, and then here's how we use blockchain to decentralize them. I'm thinking about Argo. They don't do anything sketchy at all. They're basically Vercel, but for the decentralized web. So they make it really easy for you to connect your domain name or your Handshake domain to your website or app that's built on Arweave or like Skynet. And they had their domain taken down by GoDaddy, which makes no sense at all because they're like the most like legit project. There's nothing sketchy about them at all. And yet they had their domain taken down. And I think we're just going to see more and more of these, especially in DeFi and such.
Yeah, absolutely. And Georgi, tell me from the BitTube perspective, how do you guys feel that internet freedom is threatened?
So BitTube is about video content. So I think freedom comes with the ability to have a choice. And when you express your opinion, sometimes this opinion doesn't align with the some governments or what is allowed to be publicly available on the internet. So what we see with BitTube is that a lot of users come from YouTube, where their videos being taken down or just not monetized because they're not into the norms. And BitTube tried different ways to host content, video content on the internet, starting with the bit.tube platform, which was the first website in 2018. And by the way, we had experienced domain. The domain was taken, was blocked in Russia for some unknown reason. Probably some content didn't go well in Russia. And so later on, we moved to the WebTorrent model of hosting content. And of course, the monetization model called Airtime that BitTube developed is ad-free. So we believe hosting of the content and not using ads to monetize that content is the way to spread more, to offer more freedom for people using the internet.
Fantastic. Luis, as a user, but also as a thinker, how do you perceive these threats to our internet freedom?
Oh man, well, I got shut down from YouTube and Facebook. I had a page, was Emancipated Human. It had 75,000 likes. I was reaching 2 to 4 million people a week back when it was organic reach. It was crazy. And I started posting about white phosphorus attacks in Syria. And immediately after I started doing that, I got shut down. They didn't give me any reason. But that was the only thing that I started doing differently. I was trying to do some journalism back in the day. And right off the bat, I was like, okay, like that really scared me. Because if somebody can just flip a switch just like that, if you're posting something that people don't like, then, you know, they can shut me down just like that. And why are all of these other big media people allowed to do things, you know? So that kind of led me into really understanding that the media outlets are just thought puppets of the machinery, and they're just feeding certain narratives to people. So, you know, from the start, I was really freaked out because of that. I received death threats. I received all sorts of things, even from people that were following the channel, just, you know, because they were like, oh, that's not true, this and that. Like people that had cognitive dissonance from the content. So I can understand, like, if you are posting stupid shit, you know, like, okay, maybe you shouldn't do that. But if you're like really reporting the news and you're really doing journalism, that you should be allowed to do it. But, you know, so that was my first encounter. I also did a lot of cop block back in the day, I don't know, 10 years ago. I don't know if you guys know about that. Here in the United States, we had really big police brutality. So we started going out with our weapons and just pulling out our phone and reporting the police. And we got chastised for that too. So, you know, over and over again, I keep seeing that these guys just have the power to do whatever the hell they want. So I think the OI websites. Okay, so let me back up real quick. So then I was like, okay, I'm gonna make my own fucking server. Screw everybody else, right? But even then, like you guys mentioned, who owns the .com? You know, like, and why do I have to pay $200 every year? I don't own that name, you know? So I've been thinking more recently about like going into the blockchain, because then that's centralized. That cannot be taken down and the name will be mine forever. I only have to pay once. So I think it's really important that we really realize that even though we have access to the means of production, we can have our own media, we can have all of these things, we're only allowed to do things that they deem, um, like you could do, not just anything. So that's really scary.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I hear you. Okay, so if this is the situation we're in right now, and we have several parts of the internet that worry us, that certain parts are very, very centralized. There is censorship, which is widely applied right now. The situation seems to be getting worse than better. So, what can we do to democratize the internet? Johhny, what's your view on what needs to be done right now for that?
Yeah, from again, I only speak from the DNS perspective, but I mean this one, I guess we're really biased because I do represent Handshake in this case, but you can just get yourself a Handshake name since it's already fully decentralized. There's no central authority. It's permissionless. You don't need to get permission from anyone to get yourself a Handshake name that you yourself truly own. And with that, it means it's uncensorable. Nobody can take it away from you. Nobody can prevent others from accessing your website as well. That sounds pretty democratized to me.
Brilliant. Okay. Luis, you wanted to jump in before. What do you think are the most important parts of democratizing the internet? Where should we be looking?
I think it is my experience that the very first thing we need to do is to educate people, because you can have the best of everything and people are not going to use it because they don't know what it is. They don't know that it even exists. So, the idea of the activists or even the influencer, a lot of people cringe on the influencers. I think that they're actually great. So if we're able to spread the word and let everybody know, hey, this is happening, and they hear it from various angles, people are going to start using it. Because if they don't, they're just going to stay focused on, the news at 8 o'clock or whatever. So education is paramount.
I actually really agree with that sentiment. It's I think one of the issues with the decentralized web is simply that not enough people really know these efforts are happening, and all the technology stacks, right? You have the naming layer, you have the hosting layer, the storage layer. Like they're all ready. these decentralized web projects, it's ready to go. So at this point, it's really getting the word out, and the more people who know that this movement is happening, the more democratized the internet becomes, because just the way like Web3 as a whole is set up is inherently democratic.
I agree with both of you, because essentially what the situation we have here is that the internet is extremely centralized. It's being strangled right now from various directions, and people need to know how to escape that. And if they don't know how to escape that, then they just follow the normal channels, and then they get constantly constricted by the systems and the processes and everything that has been put in place to offer the full benefits of the internet to the big corporations again, and not to everybody as it was intended. Georgi, from your point of view, how do you see the democratization of the internet? What are the essential elements?
I was going to say the same, that the first step is education, and we're very happy joining the BPSAA for this main goal to educate people to that there are alternatives. And I think user experience always searches the least resistance, and people will continue using centralized services if we if we don't make it easy for them to access information that is decentralized, that respects freedom of speech and so on.
I
Yeah.
think you're touching on a very, very, very good point there. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
So projects that work on decentralization and the one of the most important thing in my opinion is to enable users to access easy let's give an example. The first BitTube platform, bit.tube, that doesn't exist anymore, we enabled when you search for a video, and because we were a new project and there were not so much content, if our search doesn't find what you search for, it will show you BitTube and YouTube embeds within the platform. And so basically you could watch YouTube through BitTube, and still you get some rewards of tubes because you're using the BitTube system. And the funny story is that we had so many reports that from owners, why you have my you stole my content, you uploaded your video, and although there was a badge that this is an YouTube embed, people couldn't make the difference, and that's why we removed it. It was very frustrating. Of all the reports, people couldn't recognize that. And here again comes the education.
Okay, so from what I gathered so far, we have spoken about how internet freedom is threatened. We spoke about some steps we need to take to democratize the internet, education, ease of use, and so forth. Which parts of the internet do we need to take back, though? I mean, from what Johhny said so far, I understood that DNS is an important element of the internet that controls all the addresses of all websites. And if that's controlled by one central entity, then that's a huge problem. But what other parts of the internet, apart from DNS, do we need to take back?
Storage, maybe hosting.
So this is something that Ether Protocol looks after, don't they? So basically, Ether Protocol, they offer decentralized storage, and then they are one of the members of the BPSAA. But what other parts of the internet you think are critical in taking back?
If I can share, I think definitely storage, because there's a lot of people that don't know that the cloud is just somebody else's computer. Like, it's not a magical thing that's in the sky, and if we really tell people, like, you're just trusting somebody else with your stuff, like if we make that point, they will probably understand. So again, to education, but also I think, like, privacy is our own responsibility. So speaking on channels that are more secure and using systems that will keep us, a lot of people say, well, that's too many steps, and yeah, I agree, because it's a battle against using so many calories. Like, we're still thinking in tribal terms, but the idea is, like, life doesn't get better or worse, it just gets more complex, and every step, every year, every whatever, we have to make sure that we understand how life works. For instance, my grandma, at this point, she's elderly, and I tell my kids, she's kind of like a first iPad that cannot do the new operative system upload. Just, they can't. So every generation has to be able to understand things better and apply things. So your responsibility is to make sure that you are not getting tracked. So on your phone, like, what apps are you using? Or even if you're using normal apps, do you let them track you? There's ways about it. I think that's, like, the most important thing beyond Like what else do we need to get? Like, yeah, just get your safety back.
From a technical perspective, Johhny, apart from DNS, what else is there which can clog up the internet? Because obviously there is another fear out there from a lot of people, and you could say that it's valid, that governments at any point in time now can switch off the internet. This is a valid concern because in some countries it has already happened. And we also know that certain governments have policies, communication policies, when there is a crisis where they like to switch off certain communication. So that is kind of like a real fear. Is there something happening in blockchain to counter that from what you guys know?
Yeah, the question before was what parts of the internet do we need to take back? And I wanted to respond with every part. There are many layers to the internet, right? All Handshake handles is the naming layer, the domain name system layer. But under that, you have, your names need to point to something, an IP address. Those need to be taken back. Those are literally like the only way to get an IP address these days is to get it on the secondary market. There is no way to get one for yourself in any other way. But I do know some projects that are working on this. I think it's called TNS blockchain is one. And then you go under that. We've been talking about storage this whole time. So that's great. You guys already covered that. There's even like cloud computing. So you have like Amazon Web Services. That's pretty centralized. Is there a way to take that back as well?
Is that not what IPFS is doing, Johhny?
No, I think IPFS is more about the storage layer. If it comes to cloud computing, I'm thinking about Akash Network.
Hosting, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, so IPFS for hosting, right? And then you have like the AWS like cloud computing side, which Akash Network is providing a blockchain-based decentralized form of that as well. They're a direct competitor to AWS. So these layers, there are already projects that have created the democratized solutions for each of these layers of the internet. So I would say we need to take back every part of it. But the amazing thing is the solutions are already here. They already exist. So that's what we were talking about earlier about really at this point is getting the word out that, hey, the decentralized web is ready for you. You just need to take a look. But you mentioned shutting off, like governments shutting off access to the internet.
Yeah.
The first thing I'm thinking about is Turkey, when they kind of blocked access to Wikipedia and other websites. That was actually a pretty low-level censorship attempt. They just kind of, like the way around it was just to point your DNS resolver to like anything else. So people were spray painting 1.1.1.1 Cloudflare's DNS resolver. And just doing that alone was sufficient to get around that censorship. But then you have like, if you go a little deeper, then you have like the actual ISPs who might just straight up shut down your connection to the internet. That's why I'm personally pretty excited about efforts like Starlink, where your internet just gets beamed down from space, and it's going to be pretty hard to shut that down, unless I guess SpaceX decides to do so.
I wanted to ask you about that. I think there are a few blockchain outfits that are working on alternatives to the cable, right? So there are some that work with radio waves and with other technologies which are not relying on cables to transmit sort of internet connections.
I would love to learn a little bit more about them. I'm thinking about helium currently, but even
exactly.
helium, But you still need to connect to your existing internet in order for Helium to work. So it's not a direct solution to that. My understanding is that you still need to connect to traditional Wi-Fi in order to for the Helium network to even work. So if your traditional internet gets shut down, then Helium still gets shut down anyways. That's my understanding.
The solutions I've heard of is that the miners they provide, they also act as the actual transmitter. So they have, they are more sort of successful in urban areas because there is more of them, and you need to have one every certain amount of meters or a certain distance for it to work.
But what happens if say I'm running a hotspot, a Helium hotspot in my house? What happens if my Wi-Fi shuts off? If I just turn off the router, right? Does my hotspot still work? I don't know. I don't think so. But if it did, then that's a completely different conversation. Like that would be very, very, very interesting. If all a Helium hotspot needed to do was just to have connection to another Helium hotspot, that would be amazing.
Brilliant. So, I mean, okay, we went through quite a lot of stuff in terms of what's going on out there, but really, I want to go back to something that Georgi mentioned a while back, which was that if we don't make it easy enough for users to adapt to the decentralized internet, then we're never going to get rid of those centralized services. So what are the key challenges that we're facing right now from a project perspective? Georgi, what is the most difficult thing about introducing people to decentralized technology like the one offered by BitTube?
BitTube is focused on providing peer-to-peer video streaming, and the biggest challenge for BitTube is the network effect, meaning because we're a new project, there are not so many people watching videos on the platform, and if a certain video has only one peer and another person wants to view that video, there will be some lagging and disturbing of the video. So our biggest challenge is to expand the user base and have videos. So the videos are there partitions of a video into a lot of computers, but before these partitions get distributed to that computers, the user needs to have watched the video, and that creates the barrier for expansion. And the other biggest challenge for us is that when people search for something, maybe they don't find it on BitTube because it's not on the WebTorrent network.
Thank you for that, Johhny. When it comes to the domain names that Handshake offers, I mean, I know right now, from what I understand, there's a little bit of a process sort of to access them. Is there plans for you to launch a special browser where you can just browse, alternative domains like Handshake domains?
Yeah, I do think that's great that you brought that point up. I think the key challenge for Handshake is the resolution part. The single most highly trafficked content that we have is how do I access Handshake domains? So that is one of its key challenges. You asked, are there? You're asking about browser options essentially. There actually exists a couple browsers that already support Handshake. One was specifically built for Handshake. The name is slipping my head. The other one is Puma browser. It's a mobile privacy browser that just natively resolves Handshake. So you don't need to do anything. You download the browser and you're surfing the decentralized web through Handshake.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and on top of that, there's also collaborations with other. I'm thinking about Sentinel, which a little disappointed they're not here because we have some pretty awesome news to share alongside them. But essentially, if you connect to Sentinel VPN, then you also have access to Handshake. So you don't even need to download a specific browser. As long as you're using Sentinel, you have right. The VPN encrypts your internet traffic, but then you also get access to the decentralized Handshake internet.
Oh wow! Is that a bit of a new collaboration with Sentinel?
Yeah, we're actually should be. I think they already announced it, but the Handshake side of things wasn't explicit. We are saving that for a separate announcement. So yeah,
I like breaking news. I love breaking news.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Luis, from your point of view, again, as you know, as somebody who believes in the libertarian movement, what do you think are the key challenges for us to sort of take back the internet from those centralized entities? You know, apart from like some of the technical challenges the guys mentioned already.
Really, honestly, I think that the problem is not even the government. The problem is not any of the seemingly bad guys. The problem is that people tend to be lazy and they're not going to look out for a better alternative because why? They're happy, they are content with their lives. Like it's too much work. And I mean, I've been an activist for, it's going to be 12 years. And that's what I keep seeing. So that, in my perspective, the challenge is people tend to be lazy. So how do we inspire liberty? How do we do that? And that's been my focus. Once I realized that, I stopped trying to convince people. I just focus on people that are already in the mindset, and I just push them a little more. Because if you spend countless hours arguing with people on Facebook, things like that never takes you anywhere. Yes, I was able to convert some people, but that's not a good use of your time. So in my perspective, that is the biggest challenge. And so also, as a consultant and even a student of shamanism and all those things, like we are, there's a lot of noise out there, and we have to pierce through that noise and get people to hear us. And how do we do that? We try to live the best life that we can. We show them by doing. So inspiration, kind of like the movie Inception. Like if you tell them to do something, they're not going to do it, especially because people don't like to be told what to do. So the problem is that, they're kind of lazy.
You said that the bad guys are not the problem. I actually would go one step further to say to you that the bad guys are the solution. So if we're going to gain anything, we're going to have, Zuckerberg and Bezos and all these people to thank, because, they are turning on the screws on people. They're, Google and the likes are pushing them out of the platforms, censoring them left, right, and center. And I think this is how people are starting to understand the value of their freedom, of their privacy, and of their security online.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think that most of those guys started with, a good idea and probably even a good heart. But to be able to get to the point where they're at, they have to, start dancing with the devil. So, but the way I see it, like I tell you, it's not that things get better or worse, they just get more complicated. So your point is, I love it. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I don't think we thank Mark enough for all he has done for privacy and freedom.
Yeah, and Apple, there's a lot of people that shit on Apple. Like, I absolutely love them because they gave the finger to the United States government. They're the only ones that have done that have had the balls to say no, you know?
Absolutely. Okay, in terms of plans for the future, and sort of talking to Handshake and BitTube, what are your projects now doing to retain internet freedom? Is there any immediate plans you have? I mean, we heard from Johhny and a great news about a partnership with Sentinel, which obviously offered DVPN services, which help you keep your privacy online. But what else are you guys doing right now to push towards that direction and help us, keep the internet free?
Is that for me?
Yeah, sure, for both of you, you and Georgi.
Yeah, we're providing uncensorable domain names that you can actually own. Yeah, which means you're I mean, there's so many layers to the internet. So
should we start saying not your keys, not your domains?
Yeah, actually though, right? Not your keys, absolutely not your domains. And yeah, with Handshake, you actually, your domains are in your wallet now, which is a pretty crazy concept. Compared, I mean, if you have like a hardware wallet, then you could literally say you have your domain in your pocket, your physical pocket, which is kind of an absurd concept. Jeez.
It is, especially for those people that don't know where their login details to the website are.
Yeah. Well,
George,
but then you still have the private key and stuff. But
of course, yeah.
I think to protect your privacy, you need to have multiple layers of defense. And from the BitTube perspective, and talking from the as a BitTube, talking from the perspective of content creators, probably it's a good idea to have your videos and to upload it to platforms where you are sure that the content is your own. You own the content and the hosting of this content, and it's distributed. So, for example, BitTube.tv, it's a hybrid platform where it's peer-to-peer, but also and with BitTube servers. So the distribution of the videos is backed up via URI, where in cases if we are forced by legal enforcement to remove a post, having the URI your video will be still accessible and not deleted from the internet. Just the post will be removed. And for this to happen, we will need official document. And what we really try to not do is to be the middleman who will decide which video to stay online and which not. That's why there is a moderation area, and we are thinking how to decentralize when there is a dispute, what content should be removed and what content should stay. For some cases, very easy to decide. Let's say if we see it's adult content, we don't allow this. There's other platforms that allow this, we remove it. But when it comes to freedom of speech and hate speech, the limit and it's very fine. And here is very difficult to decide what is right and what is not.
And that's why decentralization is important, right? So there's some kind of democratic moderation, and that moderation doesn't come from centralized entities. Wow, this discussion has been amazing. I wish we could go on forever. You guys have been incredible. So thank you very much for coming in today. I want to specifically thank Luis for coming in at such short notice and giving us his thoughts. Georgi from the BitTube project, Johhny from Handshake Domains. Do you guys want to send a final message to the people that are listening to us right now?
I would just, it seems like a lot of our conversation today was about just getting the word out for the decentralized web movement. And it all comes down to adoption at the end of the day, which is why we're here, because that's one of the big reasons why the BPSAA exists in the first place. Let's just keep pushing along.
I would like to thank all content creators that post their work on BitTube and encourage them to keep the good work.
I am super happy that I spent an hour with you guys. I think this is really good content that needs to get out. Again, education, sharing, spreading the word. And I think it's not enough to be right. We also have to be effective, So keeping that in mind and just sharing and whatever we can do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to everybody who's listening, don't forget that our next installment is about interoperability and the question if blockchains can work together and the key challenges of cross-chain consensus protocols. So that's going to be a technical talk, but very, very interesting. So don't miss that. Thank you all for your time. Thank you to all the guests for coming today, and see you at the next podcast.